5, 4, 3. That's the motto, and that is it for us today. And we'll leave you with it. I can't do it. We'll do it live. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it, and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks. In 5, 4, 3.
Welcome to the Wolff Den, presented by Win Again Academy. I'm Matt Wolff, founder and CEO of Ticket Time Machine. Win Again Academy is our sponsor here. Mark Moyer doing some great things with his networking and informational events. Check out winagainacademy.com. We got Stewie introducing us today. Figured we'd get a little inappropriate to start because we are going to get a little inappropriate down the line. Welcome Arthur Greenleaf Holmes to the Wolff Den. Arthur, how's everything going?
It's going well. Thanks a lot for having me.
Really so for people who don't know who you are, I met you at the Florida Renaissance Festival, but tell everybody who you are and what you do, and we'll get right into it.
Well, my name is Gordon Boudreau, and I suppose I'm a actor, comedian, writer, and I have been performing at Renaissance festivals mostly for most of my adult life. And I developed a character called Arthur Greenleaf Holmes, and I developed that after I was asked to play a poet. And so that developed into a stage show, and it's a very adult stage show. But I also think it's a very poetic show. I've written a bunch of poems that I try to model after the style and language of classic English poetry, and it's really turned into a really nice experience, I think.
Yeah, I can attest to that, and we'll talk about the show and get into everything. But where are you from?
I'm from Syracuse, New York, originally. Yeah, upstate New York, and that's where we live right now. Although you hardly know it because we're on the road a lot doing shows. Right now, I'm in Texas, as a matter of fact. But
how did you come up with Arthur Greenleaf? I mean, where did that come from? Is that historical?
No, it's not. But I wanted. At a lot of these festivals, I've seen poets, I've seen other characters who make what I call very obvious and almost annoyingly so choices.
Right.
And I didn't want to be a poet that wrote Roses Are Red poems or read other people's poetry or just did limericks. I wanted to really be a poet. And I think I started with the name. And I looked at classic poets, so I think Arthur may have come from not a poet, but Arthur Conan Doyle. Greenleaf came from John Greenleaf Whittier, the American poet, and Holmes, Oliver Wendell Holmes. And I just sort of took these names because it sounded like a poet's name.
Do most people know it's not your name? Because I don't think you say anything at the show.
I think they know that it's not my real name.
Yeah.
Most of these characters at these festivals play a different, have different names.
Yeah, and I mean, I saw you at the Renaissance Festival. Why Renaissance Festival? There's a lot of festivals out there. Yeah. Why does Renaissance fit well for what you're doing? Or was that, or did someone from Renaissance ask you to do it and then it kind of just stuck?
I tell this story a lot, but in college, I was so afraid of speaking in front of people that I would drop classes if I found out that I had to give an oral report in front of the class. I was terrified of it. And I had two friends, Chuck and Mike, who were actors in college, and they dared me to audition for a play. And I did, and I got cast. And I thought, oh no, now what? And I'm doing this play, and I really enjoyed doing it. And the director of a Renaissance festival, Gary Izzo, up in the Sterling Fair, which is up near Syracuse, saw me in my first play, and then he offered me a job at the festival. And now I thought I'm really going to be discovered as a fraud, And I did that show for a couple of years, and then I was offered a place in what they called the Mud Show, where three guys play these beggars, and we did adaptations of Beowulf and Dante's Inferno, and we got offered jobs at other festivals around the country. And before I knew it, I never planned it. I never pursued it, really. It just came to me, being offered jobs at Renaissance festivals. But let me say that what Renaissance, they're the butt of a lot of jokes when it comes to performers and And we all know the cheesy stereotypes that Renaissance festivals get, but what they do provide is a kind of performing that you just don't see much of anymore. Like for me, what I love is that I have my stage show, but I'm also walking around in between my shows, encountering people, doing essentially street work. And it's the street work element of my pedigree that I think has informed my own show. I mean, I don't think that my show would be as interesting if it was only the material of the poems, but it's not. It's the interaction with the audience in between. And that comes from Renaissance festivals.
Yeah. We had Kosher Dills on the show earlier this week, and he's a rapper who also does what you would call street performing, but that's not who he is. It's just, another aspect of what he does, which is not easy to do, performing in front of 10 people or whoever happens to show up. So I think that's a great point about, the Renaissance Fest, because people will stop you when you're not on your show and talk to you, and then you kind of give them a little tease, right?
Yeah, and it's a bit like a laboratory, and my advice to people who come up to me and say, I want to do a stage show at these festivals also, my answer, what I give them is always, don't go on stage first. Use the street and develop this thing until it's ready for the stage, because it's a gold mine of learning experiences and getting comfortable with your material.
I mean, it's even, it is a comedy show, but you've got a lot of writing. So one of the most awkward things for me is a show that doesn't hit, right? You're sitting in the audience and people are supposed to laugh and they don't. I've never been to your show where it happens, just because ultimately, there's a lot of heckling / interaction that goes on. That's always comedy gold to begin with. Specifically someone who brings their underage kid into the show, and you warn them. And I don't think it's anything that these kids are even going to understand or anything, but it's still funny interaction when there's a kid in there, or even a 12, 13, 14-year-old, and their parents are there. That's easy. That's like lobbing a softball to you, right?
Yeah, and that my interaction with kids, some of that came from street work too. I used to play a beggar, and I'd sit out in the dirt at these festivals, and people would throw money at me. But when a kid would start to annoy me, I'd give him $1 and I'd say, here's $1, go buy some parenting. Yeah. And that became part of my show. I changed the punchline to that, but in giving kids money to leave, or hush money, has become part of the show. And that's the other reason I do Renaissance festivals, is just for the sheer material that is in front of you all the time. There's people coming and going. There's noise distractions. There's drunk people falling over the bench. And they say sometimes that stand-up is the purest form of comedy, and I'm not sure about that. I think that the kind of comedy where there's stuff happening and it's not such an antiseptic environment as a darkened comedy club, I think that seems a little more pure to me.
Well, a two-way interaction is, because generally speaking, a stand-up doesn't interact with the audience unless they're being an asshole, right? And
is anyone dating here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's
anyone from out of town. That sort
of a low-hanging fruit. Yeah. Well, let's get right into it here. Arthur Greenleaf Holmes, inappropriate poet, mostly of the Renaissance. Give us a start. What I know we don't want to go start at the 8s or the 9s. No. Want to give us a 5, a 6? What do you want to start with?
Well, the one I usually begin my show with is the first of my prepubescent poems, which I say that I wrote when right before my character's testicles descended at the age of 32 years old. Arthur had a late blooming puberty. Yeah. And it affected his first marriage. But let's do Mother Will My Stones Drop.
Let's do it.
All right. I'm going to deliver this in the original prepubescent voice. Mother, will my stones drop ere I turn 29? I tire of this empty sack against my hairless thigh. And when will I awaken to find my mattress wet? It's happened to the other boys but I've not known it yet. And will my wanker bolden and shed its pinkish skin? And will it grow a hairy nest to spend its evenings in? And mother, what's a clitoris? And is it hard to find? My cousin said she'd show me hers if I would show her mine.
That's great. And what number is that? What do we rate that?
I'd say that's about a 6, maybe.
6, yeah. Funny side story. I have a friend who's very inexperienced, and I got a text from him asking me if I've ever heard of the clitoris. I don't even think my friend and I were just talking about today. We're like, is he joking or we don't know for sure. And he's older.
You don't know if that's a joke.
I think he was not joking. I think he heard of it and he was not joking. But we'll have to confirm. But one of the things I love about your stuff and what hits for a lot of people is the delivery, right? I mean, you can have 10 people do that exact same thing, and half of them are probably going to bomb, right?
I don't know.
I mean, it's funny, right? And you can read it, and you can have a certain, thought about who's reading it or what it sounds like or a visual in it.
Well, I remember there was one time at a festival when my voice had gone. I had a cold on the Friday before the weekend, and I got through the weekend, but the last show of the last day, I just had no more voice. And so I invited friends of mine who'd seen the show a bunch of times to come up on stage and do the show for me. They each chose a different poem. And there's one guy who really wanted to do this poem I wrote called I Built My Love a Menstrual Hut. He really wanted to do that one. He'd seen it a bajillion times. He got up and he recited it, but there's no rhythm to it. There's no meter to it. He just read it as if it was a run-on sentence. And I think that there's a certain musical ear that you need for this. And I was a bit startled to see that not everyone has it,
Oh, you know what it reminds me of? Karaoke for someone who doesn't know what the hell I mean, the words are right there. You've heard the song, but they can't keep up, and they're just like, it's funny to watch sometimes, but it's true. Yeah, I might not have the best voice, but I'm going to hit the song as it's supposed to be done.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting analogy. I think that holds up. Yeah.
And for speaking of funny voices, one of my closest friends got married, and he told me like something was going to happen at the wedding that I was going to laugh my ass off for. And the priest had a no voice, and he basically sounded like the Princess Bride. Remember, love, true love. He basically sounded like that. And my friend and I are in the audience, and we're laughing like you couldn't not laugh at this thing. We almost had to. My friend's wife was like giving us the look of death. You almost couldn't laugh. I think we almost had to leave the wedding. But and I don't know how they kept a straight face on the stage. But it's voice is a funny thing. Also, my friend J.D. Iker, who's a songwriter, has a show he does on Monday, and he does songs in a funny contest, just saying them with a really great delivery. And it's kind of reminds me of the stuff that you do. Renaissance Fest is really the OG Comic-Con, right? I mean, because people are walking around. I mean, I don't ever go with anything, but what would you say? 50% of the people are walking around in costume?
That's probably true. And one of the things that has led to a sort of a revitalization in Renaissance fairs is the beginning of these themed weekends. They started to make the weekends themed so that there might be a pirate weekend or a steampunk weekend, and they don't really adhere to the Renaissance, but the people who are into cosplay love it, and I think it's fun.
And people get into character too, so it's always it's fun to watch 50% dressed, 50% not, people in character, people who can't be bothered by your your shit, right? And you're like, look, lady, I just want a hot dog and a beer.
I want a beer and a curb.
Yeah, we love going. It didn't happen this year, obviously, but you talked about Texas. You're doing a show. I read up a little bit about your Broadway, which was set to go last year, but was that canceled?
No, well, it's postponed, and the tentative sort of target date is November, but we're staying fluid with that. We'll have to see. I mean, if Broadway opens up, when New York opens up, then we'll look at the time. It might be November. It might be a little bit later than that, but it's going to happen.
And that's and what's that going to look like, that show?
Well, it's going to be a little bit different from the Renaissance Festival kind of a show, but we have this salon that we're going to be, furnishing, and it'll be different. But there's going to be an open, not an open. There's going to be music, maybe a 3-piece string quartet with the three-piece string band playing. It's going to be different.
What are the poems going to be like?
Same ones.
Same poems, just different.
Oh, yeah, and it'll be about a 90-minute show. I mean, in so many ways, it'll be like the show that I do at the festivals. But you lose a lot when you bring it inside. You lose the people coming and going, and the kids in the audience, and that sort of stuff. So,
will there be interaction with the crowd, or yeah?
Yes, always.
Great. How many new poems do you write? Because I've heard everyone asks for the classics, and we'll ask you to read some of the ones that I heard. But how many poems do you have in total, and how many new ones do you write in a year?
I must have close to 100 poems, and a year I probably write about 10 poems a year. It's odd because you write a new poem, and then you got to find a way to put it into the show, which also means taking something else out of the show. But the fact that I do 4 shows a day at these festivals allows me to mix up the poems in each show. And I think that if I ever stopped writing, that would be the time to stop doing the show, because there's that, the last thing I want is to be doing the same poems for 30 years with no changes.
And there's a lot of repeat at a festival like this. There's repeat. People come to the day, they buy season passes, they come back the next year. I mean, my wife and I do it all the time, and it's, you got to mix it up a little bit for the people. Yeah. But people probably do ask for the same ones a lot. They're all like, and we'll ask you to read another one here. One that I like is I bought a cheese. What number would you say that is?
That's like a 4, 3.
So that's not bad.
That's a good early in the show.
What number is Menstrual Hut?
That's the 10.
All right, we'll close with the 10. But give us we started with a 6. Give us a 7 or an 8.
Wait, you mentioned cheese. Do you know about the John Cleese thing?
Well, I thought I saw that might have been where it reminded me.
Oh yeah. Let me just tell you about this.
Yeah.
I was doing some live streams during the layoff, and I mentioned that I have this one poem called "A Hearthside Conversation" about a father that freaks out on his family. And I mentioned once that I wrote that poem with John Cleese's voice in my head. And a friend of mine said, you should try to reach out to him, see if he'll, record himself doing it. And I was like, yeah, right. But I did. And he video messaged me back, gave me his phone number, told me to call him. So I called him, and he said, this is very interesting and a very unique request. And I want to make it happen. And so he was in the recording studio a couple of weeks later, and he wanted me to zoom in, on Zoom and direct him, which made me laugh. He goes, well, it's your poem. I want you to direct me. So I did it, and it's terrific. It's on my YouTube channel. John Cleese doing "I Bought a Cheese and Thought of You." It's wonderful the way he delivers it. And maybe as early as today, but probably tomorrow, I'll have Penn Jillette reciting my poem "She Shanty," and that'll be up on YouTube also.
Oh, that's awesome. How do you get in touch with them? I mean, is it social media, manager?
How did I get in touch with them?
Yeah.
Well, with Cleese, I got in touch with him through Cameo.
Okay.
I sent him a little text, and then I didn't expect him to video me back and then call me and all that. When it was all over, I sent him a basket of cheeses that said, "I bought this cheese and thought of you."
That's a good one.
But he's friends with Penn Jillette, and so that led to that. So we don't know where it's going to end.
Oh, that's pretty great. I imagine it's going to be well received, especially the Penn Jillette and John Cleese. That's Have you ever heard of Richard Cheese, who does the funny songs? Have you ever heard of him?
No, Richard Cheese, no.
Yeah, I guess they call him Dick Cheese, but Richard Cheese. I love that type of stuff. Like Weird Al, in my mind, is a Hall of Famer. His stuff is just genius. When you can take, it's not easy to do. Try and think about writing a poem is not easy to do regardless. But now you have this specific type of poem that you want to do. So I think all those people like, Richard Cheese and Weird Al and the kind of stuff that you're doing is very unique. And there's definitely a place for it. Cool. Have you ever thought about going on like America's Got Talent type show?
No, I don't think so, because it's not. When you do this for long enough, you start to understand what's the best setup for you. And I don't think that puts me in the best position. For one thing, on America's Got Talent, I couldn't do the kind of material I do anyway. It's primetime family entertainment, right?
I don't know. There's some comedians that were kind of, really? Right up at the line.
There's also the thing that, when you go to a Renaissance festival, you have a context for me showing up in 16th century garb. When there's no context to that, it becomes a weird guy standing in a.
I think you get that weird look at the front, and they'd be like, "What? This guy? We're gonna buzz him." But once you start doing your thing, you turn them around. Anyway, that's just something I thought about. What would mean? I mean, we talked about this with Kosha. Street performing in front of 10 people. You perform at shows. Sometimes there's 20, 40. Is there a next step for Arthur Greenleaf Holmes?
Well, it's the off-Broadway show, I think, is that, and we'll see where that goes. I was right on the cusp of that before COVID hit. And I just want to see where this show can go outside of Ren Fairs, and so I think that's the next step is maybe an extended New York run.
How many days shows? Is it a couple shows a night or matinee?
2 shows a day on the weekends, and then I think we do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
All right, man. I think do you anticipate getting people more who know who you are, or a lot of people who've never heard of you? Is that going to depend on marketing? What are you expecting when this thing goes?
Well, that's one of the reasons we had someone like John Cleese do this poem, is that if we can, the way we structure those 2 recordings, that like John Cleese pretends that he has just discovered this obscure 19th century poet. So if people hear about this, and then they hear Penn Jillette doing it, and then they find out that there's a show that goes along with it, then they're like, well, I've got to see the show. And so we're using it as marketing.
Yeah, I mean, you got to use the heck out of it. It's great to have someone want to, help or think that your stuff is good enough that they would throw their name on it, without having to pay someone tens of thousands of dollars, which is always good. I always think like, look, if you believe in what I'm doing, help me, talk about it. And that's one of the reasons why I have this show. It's like, I believe in the people and want to share their story and help them promote what they're doing. We had someone who, in conversation, they talked about a drink, and I was like, oh, which drink is your favorite? Like, well, I'm not going to tell you unless they're paying me to say it. I'm just like, well, you drink it all the time. I mean, I don't really care. I'm not trying to help anyone out, but I will help everyone out if you can. Just be like, man, this is the coolest thing. And then hopefully it goes and people do well with it. It's, people like you and people like me, we need help from the people like John and Penn, who started out in areas like us, right? And nobody, I don't care what they say, nobody got to where they are at a high level without a lot of help from a lot of people believing in them believing in themselves, all of that stuff. Yeah. Who was your inspiration for this? Do you have, poets or comedians? And I know obviously the the people you talked about who are long past. But
at the very top is John Cleese for me. But there's a movie called It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. And almost every major comedian from the 1960s was in that one, from Dick Shawn, Phil Silvers, Jonathan Winters, Buddy Hackett. And to me, that's like a who's who of the people that inspired me. And also, you mentioned how you thought Weird Al Yankovic was Hall of Famer. I would put Mel Blanc, the voice behind Bugs Bunny in the Warner Brothers character. I would put him in that same category. I don't know why he's not considered as one of the greatest comedians of the 20th century for what he could do vocally. But I also love people like Peter Sellers, all the Monty Python guys, Steve Martin, Bill Murray, comedians like that.
What about Mel Brooks with Spaceballs and
yeah.
Blazing Saddles? I mean, that's the kind of humor that you got. Even Seth MacFarlane, the stuff he does with his voice and the writing and all that stuff is incredible. When you realize it's like one person doing 6 voices, almost like compared to Eddie Murphy and Arsenio with the whole Coming to America stuff.
Yeah. George Carlin too was a big influence on me because of what he was able to do with language, and just amazing stuff. As far as poets are concerned, I don't read a whole lot of modern poetry, but I was raised listening to reading poets like John Keats and William Wordsworth, like the English Romantic poets, Walt Whitman, Robert Frost, all those poets that we studied in college. I just love. And I think that when I was asked to play a poet, when I first started writing my poems, I don't think I was doing this consciously, but I soon came to realize that I was tapping into a kind of language that I grew up with that was somehow in there, maybe lying a little bit dormant for a while, but it all came out. So when I write poems, I try to use that sort of language and imagery. And I think that's what sets it apart from other poet comedians, because I've seen a lot of poet comedians who write things that happen to rhyme, but whether you would really call that poetry, I doubt it.
Well, aren't they just forcing a rhyme in a way?
But I also wanted the experience to be deeper than that, than just the joke. I also wanted it to be a language experience. And I think that's why I have not shied away from inviting rather elderly people to my show, because I think I'm giving them a language fix that they haven't seen before. Well, they haven't seen in a while, that they remember, but it's not out there anymore.
Have you seen The History of Cursing on Netflix? It's a really funny, interesting show that talks about the history of all this stuff. If you haven't watched it, I think it'd be great for you to watch.
Watch it. That sounds great.
Yeah, probably incorporate it into your show somehow. There's something about inappropriateness and cursing that I find really good. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's a well-placed F-bomb or a well-placed inappropriate word, like what we did at the beginning with Stewie, as opposed to, a movie where they just say it a million times just because they could say it for the sake of saying it. Right. And I think that's like cheap humor to me. And it gets annoying after a while for you just to keep dropping something that has no context with it. But, the first time I heard, Stewie Griffin drop an F-bomb, there's just something about it. It's just like, I just couldn't stop laughing because it just came out of left field. So that would be funny, I think. Have you ever tried to do a show where people didn't know what you were about to hit them with?
No, I haven't. In fact, I warn the audience in the beginning about what the show is going to be like, and I make a deal with them. And the deal is that if they leave the show, we will applaud them for doing that. We'll honor them for leaving the show. And that to me comes out of, I remember the day I was walking down to my stage. It was the first time they gave me a stage show. They said, "We want you to do this as a stage show." I kind of prepared some poems and all that. I didn't know where the show was going to go. And I'm walking down to do my very first performance. And I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to get away with this? Because this is a family festival. And these are the poems I've written. And people are going to get angry. So.
But you got hired.
Yeah, I got
You're
hired.
hired to do it, or
I hadn't done
approved.
it yet.
Hired/approved, but they knew what was coming, the organizers.
Yeah, maybe they were interested to see what would happen. And
Yeah.
as I'm walking to the stage, I'm thinking, how am I going to get away with this? And it hit me. You applaud them for leaving. And it works, because when they do leave, and they don't leave very often, but every now and then someone comes and says, this is too much for me. When they do leave and we're applauding them, they're smiling and they're waving. And that comes out of my, briefly, when I was living in New York City, I was a stand-up comedian and I wasn't very good at it. I didn't have my voice yet, but it always used to bother me when people would leave a show and they got accused of not being smart enough, right? Or they got mocked for leaving. I think it's okay if it's not for you to leave. And I never want to accuse the audience of not being smart enough for my material, because that's usually pretty insulting to them.
Yeah. I have a story. This is one of my favorite movie stories. Went to go see the South Park movie.
Yeah.
And this young lady, not that young, comes in with a young kid. Not old enough to even understand what's going, but I don't even remember if it was 2, 3, 4, whatever it was. And all of a sudden, "Shut your fucking face, Uncle Fucker" comes on, and she's out of there. And it's like the greatest, like,
she thought it was a cartoon.
It was genius. That whole song, when it just hit you like that, was genius. It's one of my favorite moments in cinema history, maybe. But I just remember leaving, and it was like, well, what did you think this thing was?
She thought it was a kid's cartoon.
I guess so. If you didn't ever hear it.
Thought, this looks nice.
But I think there's something to be said about doing a show with people not knowing what it is, hitting them with it, and to see who does leave and who doesn't leave, what the reaction is. You get obviously a little bit. And then people, look, I think your stuff is inappropriate. I think there's, it's not Andrew Dice Clay inappropriate, which is, it's still great. It's just, that's like, I don't know. That's, people go to that. I love Andrew Dice Clay. I listen to some of his stuff and I think it's funny as heck. But then I think, like, man, how the hell do you get away with saying that? And I saw him not that long ago, and he's kind of toned it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Probably because of the state of the world that we live in. Everyone gets offended by everything. And you're trying to offend people, right?
No? I am not. And to be honest with you, I would be mortified if I really felt that I offended people.
Maybe offend's not the right word. Make them get to that point where they're uncomfortable but enjoying themselves. Maybe.
I want them to laugh.
Yeah.
That's what I want them to laugh and to appreciate that the way you do something makes it palatable, right? To me, the equation for me is it can be filthy. It can be really filthy. It can be really over the line, as long as it's also cartoonish, which you where you can't take it seriously. If the imagery is cartoonish, then that goes a long way in deciding whether people will stand it or not.
Yeah, I mean, comedy, first of all, comedy is all subjective. What you think is funny, this person doesn't. But at the end of the day, it's comedy. It's meant to entertain and meant to have people laugh. And, I find it interesting when people like shame a comedian for going somewhere. It's like, well, you know who that, like, you knew what it was, or you should have known what it was before you went into it. So none of this stuff surprises me when I hear it. And some of it's probably over the top, maybe crosses the line a little bit, but I forget who it was who says, there's context of things that's funny in everything. It's just, obviously it might trigger something for someone specifically.
Yeah.
But it's hard to, fault someone for doing their thing and trying to make people laugh and entertain. It's going to offend people.
Everyone has a trigger on something, and you can't. Yeah. You just can't. I had a guy come up to me at the Pennsylvania Renaissance Festival, and he this is sort of tying into Andrew Dice Clay toning things down. But he said to me, do you find that with like the whole Me Too movement, and at this point, I thought I knew where he was going with this question, but I was wrong. I thought he was going to say that I had to tone things down a bit, but that's not what he said. He said, do you find that festivals like this are increasing in popularity because it gives people a place where the sexual mores are relaxed just a bit so that people can flirt and engage in, what is essentially harmless behavior.
Yeah, it's like Halloween. I mean, right?
Like that. Yeah, they're in costume. They flirt with each other, but it's just that, and the people who go there are going there because they enjoy it. And I thought that was an interesting question. I wonder if there's something to be said about that, about these kinds of places.
Well, it's again back to the Comic-Con dressing up. Half of them are, half of them aren't, and like just being themselves, which is great. I love it to be able to be yourself amongst people and you're like, I'm the weird one at the festival, right? Because I'm not dressed. I'm wearing my gator shirt and sneakers, and I'm the weird one.
Yeah.
Use the word weird. I don't say, but you look at these people, you're like, well, man, look at this guy. And it's great. Like they can just feel and be themselves. Kind of like the movie. Have you ever seen the movie Role Models?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great movie, right? I mean, very similar to that.
Terrific.
Funny, but it's this kid who's just, ashamed of being who he is and finds out that there's a whole family of people like that. And I don't remember where I said this, but maybe it was yesterday's episode. Like there's no one in this world who's truly unique. And what I mean by that is whatever quirk you have, whatever nerdiness or habit or whatever, there's people like you out there. Yeah. And you just got to find your people. Mm-hmm. And also be comfortable with who you are. That's one thing I am. I obviously you are. Just being very comfortable in your skin is very important. So how did you get there? It sounds like you didn't start out that way, being terrified. How did you get to be comfortable in your skin?
Jeez. Yeah, and I don't know if I'm wholly comfortable in my skin. I think I got here by. Sometimes I would try to explain a joke or something I was working on in my show or a poem to someone else. This is what I'm going to write this about. I think it's going to be really funny, and I'll explain it. And they never laugh. But I know that when I walk on stage and I do it the way I see it in my mind, it's going to work. And it almost always does. So I think over time, I just realized that explaining it to people doesn't work, but bringing it with who I am works. So I think that's how I got much more comfortable with what I do. I don't know.
You're always going to have some bit of nervousness, right? I mean, even the best and the people doing it, in front of the largest crowd have that butterflies.
There's a different kind of nervousness, though. I mean, there's the nervousness of, I'm not prepared for this. I hope I don't suck. But there's another kind of excitement, nervousness, and that's what I get when I come up to my stage and it's packed with people. I get a sort of euphoria, and I just can't wait to get going.
Can we hear another one? Can we hear an 8? Yeah. Let's get an 8.
You want an 8?
Yeah, give us an 8.
How about the Tootsberry Pudding?
All right, Tootsberry Pudding it is.
The way I introduce this is I say, I was invited to the Duchess of Kensington's for dinner, and as offensive as her meal was, the dessert was infinitely worse. It was really less of a dessert and more of a human rights violation on a platter. But I was able to force it down on the third day when my fever broke and I stopped the bleeding. I wrote this poem. This poem is called The Tootsberry Pudding. Oh, the Tootsberry Pudding's a wretched dessert. Just the slightest of bites and your prostate will hurt. Your liver will swell and your colon will squirt, and you'll blow a brown stain up the back of your shirt. Ooh, the Tootsberry Pudding's a terrible treat. They say it's a bread, but you'll swear it's a meat, and it's hardly a thing for a Christian to eat. It'll blow out old Lefty and wrinkle your teats. It chews like placenta, sebaceous and black. If you see one outside, tie it up in a sack. You can give it away, but it always crawls back, for it tastes like the drip from a camel toe's crack. Oh, the Tewksbury pudding, it's worse than you think. It enlarges the heart, but your knucks will shrink. When you're done shitting blood, well, you'll need a stiff drink. Jesus Christ, light a match, hit the fan, clean the sink. It'll cripple your gut with intestinal flu. It'll ripple your twat like a fleshy kazoo. Throw your hands to the sky and ask God what to do. Make the sign of the cross, even though you're a Jew.
That one hits home because I'm a Jew, but it's that's closer to a 9. I think you hit you got a couple words in there that I think are about as high as you go. We'll get to 10. We'll get you out on
perspective after a while.
Yeah, you know? we'll get you out of here on a 10. But you have a book. Is the book blank? Because you read from it, which I think adds to the performance. Is the book blank?
No, the book is not blank. But sometimes I'm open up to a page that's not the poem that I'm reciting. But the book, I have this thick sort of journal, and I actually use the book almost as a rim shot sometimes. It's something for me to reference, to look to after I deliver a punchline. It sort of releases the laugh. Or at the end of a poem, I'll snap it shut, and it gives this sort of a click, and then I'll do the very last line of the poem. I use it as a I don't know, it's sort of an emphasis maker, if that makes sense.
One of the things that I get really impressed with is actors on Broadway, singers. Like, how do you memorize? It's crazy how you just memorize all this stuff. Well, I guess there are people who want to be in that. You know, if you're talking about like TV and movies, they're doing takes, right? None of it's live. But when you have to do live, do you have a moment that you just kind of had a brain fart?
Oh yeah, it happens all the time, and I'm glad I have my books, and then I can just sort of ad lib around it. But for me, I never really have to sit down and memorize the poems. When I write a new poem, I'll read it from the book until it becomes memorized. You know, it just does over time if you repeat it enough times.
Do you have a story of like when you? I guess I don't want to use the word bombed, but didn't have your best performance, maybe because of that or some extenuating circumstance?
When did I do a show that really bombed? Boy. No. Well, I told this story to another friend that I was doing when I was first starting out. I was reciting "I Bought a Cheese and Thought of You" to a woman in the audience, and a fleck of spit flew out of my mouth, and I could see it go into her eye. And it was just the most embarrassing thing. And I couldn't get it back after that. I muddled through and slunked out of there.
Did you interact with her afterwards?
No.
There's a lot of alcohol drank at these things. You'd be surprised how much alcohol is drank. So I think that kind of loosens the crowd a little bit. Do you have a show that stands out as, holy cow, that was a show?
I have shows like that quite a bit. It's hard to keep any one in mind, but
what is about a show like that? What makes it?
Things happen in the audience. You know, maybe there's a kid in the audience that I'm paying off, and maybe something unique happens. There might be a drunk heckler that I just drill. You know, there's a guy this weekend. That wouldn't shut up, and he just. I mean, it's one thing if you're yelling out things that I can work with, but when they're just incoherent sounds after a while, and it's just because you're too drunk. And I told him, I stopped the show and I said, you know, when I was first, I sort of dropped my character. I said, when I was first starting out, I was an actor, and I got cast in a production of Our Town in Syracuse, New York, and just a small bit part. But the guy who played the stage manager character in that play, he has a part in the play where he talks about the new invention in town called the automobile. And I said, And that was a really interesting choice that actor made, because when there's a new invention and it's 2 words or 2 syllables, we often stress the second word or the second syllable, like automobile. Then as it becomes more familiar over time, we shorten it and put the stress on the first syllable or word, like, so it becomes automobile or just auto. Same thing with cell phones. When they were first developed, they were cellular phones, and then they became cell phones, it just cells. And I said, I'm saying this because I imagine that when you were young, I'm saying this to the drunk guy, they referred to you as an ass hole. And so I took all this time to figure this out. And then I got a standing ovation.
Yeah. Everyone loves when the heckler gets his. Jerry Seinfeld, excellent at dealing with hecklers. The best person I ever saw that's good with hecklers in the crowd, Harlan Williams.
Yeah.
You know who he is? He's great. Yeah. I mean, he could do a whole show with just the audience. He doesn't have to come with material. His whole show could be about the audience, which is crazy to me. But it works. And then, you know, my sister and I and a girlfriend of mine once went to a comedy show by accident. We actually went to the wrong place. And instead of seeing the person we thought we were seeing, we saw Mitch Fatel. And Mitch Fatel does a show exclusively about sex. I mean, literally everything's about sex. And you didn't think it would work, but it does. So, you know, you can have that narrow focus and it can really work, you know, similar to what you do. Have you ever thought of, you know, new material, a different, maybe a different spin on the show, or is it always just going to be, this is it?
No, I mean, I'm enjoying what I do so much that whatever's new is what I'm writing. You know, I'm always adding stuff to the show. I started doing my last show of the day. I started, instead of asking the audience on a scale of 1 to 10 what kind of a poem they wanted, I started asking them for a random page number, so that I just go to my books and do whatever poem is there. And there's some poems I just never really do in my show unless it comes up in that context. But
you have a favorite poem?
Oh, I built my love a menstrual hut.
All right, well, we're going to end the show with that one. Who's your Mount Rushmore of entertainment?
Oh boy.
We always ask Mount Rushmore usually we ask sports or singers. I mean, you can go comedians, but I would just say entertainment.
For me, more. I'd say Monty Python in comedy. I'd say the Beatles in music, just because they changed music and they did it again and again. Let's see. What else is there?
Did you ever see Yesterday, the movie Yesterday?
Yeah.
If you could be a comedian and go back where nobody knew who it was and you're going to do it, who would you pick? And then give me the rest of the Mount Rushmore.
It would be Monty Python.
Monty Python.
The skits that they wrote, the scenes that they wrote were so smart and so they didn't just rely on television as their influence. They looked at things like literature. They looked at things like art. I mean, they had this scene where Pablo Picasso is going to create a work of art while riding on a bicycle. How is that going to be funny? And it's funny, and it gets funnier and funnier and funnier, and it's smart. And to me, that's what they did better than anyone else. It was the confluence of academic smarts and silly, irresponsible humor. For whatever reason, it resonates with me.
I mean, that's old school. That was National Lampoon before National Lampoon, in a way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, give me the rest of your Mount Rushmore. I just had a thought about that.
Okay.
You could do more comedians or music, just whoever's the most
You know, and maybe this isn't a popular one, but I always loved Bob Dylan too, because of how he changed music that way with turning to literature and older forms of language. I know it's not popular right now, and whatever you think,
popular.
But Woody Allen, I always loved. I loved his early movies, especially like Take the Money and Run and Play It Again, Sam. And some of his books, some of his essays are just so funny. Like he could set up a joke so well.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a lot of stuff that happens, and people in the news like Woody Allen, like Bill Cosby, like who's the comedian?
See,
Yeah, CK. But it doesn't take away from their brilliance,
no,
and
you got to separate.
got to separate it, right?
Yeah, you do, and I have a hard time with that. Like, I want to talk about the people that influenced me. He didn't influence me because of his sexuality. He influenced me because of the jokes that he made. And I mean, like he says, I teach a class on masturbation. If I'm late, they start without me. Lines like that. It's just so
Yeah.
it's so good.
And it's okay to be disappointed in your heroes, like in OJ, even OJ Simpson. Like, he did what he did in football. In football,
yeah,
like, it's okay to be a fan.
He was my hero growing up, OJ Simpson.
Was he really?
Oh, I grew up near Buffalo.
Yeah, right in Buffalo.
And to watch him running through a blinding snowstorm with a buffalo on the side of his helmet, which was my favorite animal as a kid, it was everything. I loved watching him run. And the athletes that I used to love growing up were the ones that seemed the most artistic in the way they moved. Like Dr. J was almost balletic in midair.
Loved
watching Dr. J. And him. There was a baseball player from Minnesota called Rod Carew.
Oh, of course.
And he had he had a crazy batting stance, but it was totally unique to him. And
Rod Carew's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and he could just put it anywhere he wanted. He could put the ball anywhere. And those sorts of players, like Walter Payton, beautiful to watch him run.
Barry Sanders.
Yeah, people like that. People who had a sort of artistic flair in the way they were athletes. I always loved those.
And I thought OJ was great in the Naked Gun movies. I mean, he
was, wasn't he?
That's what was so crazy when the whole story broke. So actually, it's another question I like to ask, like, who would shock you? And nothing shocks me anymore for everything we've seen, but who would shock you to find out that they're the next OJ, Bill Cosby, or, whatever? Is there someone out there who you're like, there's no way? It'd be very hard to believe.
Let me think. Oh,
for me, it's Tim Tebow. I'm a Gator fan. He's
Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
Like,
is it Oprah? I mean, even Ellen, as great as she is, had to go through some shit.
No, I know who it would be for me. Betty White.
Betty White, yeah, that's a good one.
She's all hands.
That's a good one. Everyone loves Betty White. Like, you're gonna see, like,
not Betty White, anyone but Betty White.
Yeah, when she passes in like 50 years, people are gonna be like, you know what? She did this, this, and this, and it's gonna blow your mind.
People have told me that she's the next one that I have to pursue to recite a poem.
She would do it in a heartbeat. I bet. I don't. The problem is with entertainment and this popularity and all this, that if Betty White was right here and I said, Betty, we want you to do, yeah, of course, but we got to go through 8 different layers of shit to get to Betty White, which is really a shame because there's so much stuff, so much good in the world that could happen, and so much hilarious stuff and collaborations and that could happen if you didn't have to go through that. And I go through that stuff just to get guests on this show. They told me, yes, I'd love to do it, and it's like impossible to get them on.
I can get to Betty White.
Yeah,
get to Betty White.
I'm gonna help you, but here we end the show on a question that maybe Betty White is your answer. I don't know. We'll see. We'll get there. We're running out of time, but we will get there. What would you be doing if your friends didn't tell you to audition and it didn't take this route? What would you be doing?
Probably, I don't know if I'd be teaching or if I'd be working somewhere outdoors, like in environmental sciences, or maybe be like a park ranger or something like that. I love the outdoors. I love hiking, fishing.
Where's your favorite place to do that?
New York State is terrific.
Upstate?
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah. There's so much water in that state, so many trees. I would love to go up to Alaska some point, or maybe Nova Scotia, do some fishing there.
Maybe Greenland.
Greenland, yeah.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, what's on your bucket list for?
Well, I was all set to do a huge trip in Europe before COVID, and I just want to get back to that. I want to go to Germany and Spain and all
That's
that.
on tour,
No, just
personal.
me and my wife and my kids. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I did that. That was my first thing. I went all over for like 3 weeks. That was my first experience overseas. And I recommend Ireland
I've
as a
been
place
there.
to go. Yeah, Ireland is so much fun.
Yeah, we rent a car. That's the best.
Yeah, well, I got another story. My sister didn't trust me to drive, so we did a tour, and we go to the cliffs of Moher.
Yep. Cliff some more. Mm-hmm.
Fog everywhere.
Oh,
Right? We get back on the tour bus, no exaggeration, 15 minutes into our way back out, skies open up. It's beautiful.
that's Ireland.
That's why you got to take a car and do it. Don't ever take a bus.
Yeah.
And the tour was great. But, man, I mean, am I ever going to get back? I don't know. We'll see. Well, I hope to. I definitely hope to. What's the favorite – what's your bucket list venue for you to perform at? Obviously Broadway, which hopefully will come true this year.
I want to perform in London. I would love to perform in London, although there'd be some challenges with that because the slang of America is much different from the slang of England. But to perform somewhere like Carnegie Hall or the Lincoln Center would be terrific.
Yeah, that would be. How many poems do you read in a given show?
Oh, about 8.
8.
Maybe. In a 45-minute show, 8, 9, maybe.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, no one wants you to stand up there and just keep reading too, even though it's fun. But
you got to mix it up. You can't just do poem.
Yeah.
Poem, and then I'll talk about language. I'll do a language lesson or something, or I'll interact with the audience. You know.
Well, we're actually going to have you read the 10, and that's going to be the end of the show, and we're actually going to cut right after that.
That's good because the poems go up to 14. But I'll do it 10. Yeah,
or you could do a 14. I don't know. You can do whatever the heck you want.
I'll do 10.
There's nothing here. Give us a 14. I've never heard of 14, so I'm happy to have a 14 because we're hitting go and we're getting out of Dodge. Right.
I'm going to do the 10 because it's actually I've done 2 poems that were sort of not as lyrical, so I'll do Menstrual Hut.
Okay, Menstrual Hut it is. The question we always let people go on. You have 24 hours to spend with someone. They have to be living, and you can't be related to them. Who is it, and what are you going to do? And that's why I thought maybe Betty White, but there might be other people. So who's it going to be? We're going to put it on the list and make it happen.
Oh, my God.
For someone, not for everyone. We're going to try and make it happen for everyone. But my goal as the Wolff Den is to make it happen for someone.
Wow. Who would it be? It would probably be shoot, he's dead. I'm gonna say I'll say Steve Martin.
Steve Martin, great. Oh man.
I'll say Steve Martin.
What's your favorite Steve Martin movie? Mine is My Blue Heaven.
The Jerk.
The Jerk? Jerk is great. I love My Blue Heaven.
The Jerk and the Lonely Guy. I love the Lonely Guy.
That's old school. He's great. His comedy stuff, his shtick with Martin Short. I mean, it's gold.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Martin, that's great, man. I love that answer. It's we're gonna do it. He's on the list.
All right.
Arthur Greenleaf Holmes, ArthurGreenleafHolmes.com. Check out his podcast. You could buy some poetry on the website, right? Your book of poems.
ArthurGreenleafHolmes.com.
Yeah, you can become kind of a member. I know if you donate, you can do some stuff on there I saw. So I encourage you to help. Check out where he's going to be. See him at a Renaissance festival. Go to a Renaissance festival if you're not. I guarantee you that you're going to have a great time regardless. But if he's there, go see him. Tell him you saw him on the Wolff Den, and he'll give you nothing, but he'll smile. And give us the 10, and we're going to click end right when you finish.
You got it. This poem is called I Built My Love a Menstrual Hut. I built my love a menstrual hut. I built it out of clay. With earthen halls and wattled walls, I built it far away. That I might have some solitude when twixt her thighs she leaks. Away, my love, get thee to hut, and stay you for a week. and stay a while till calm returns, that I won't have to bear thy grinding voice and hissing tongue that claws my inner ear. For I've got work to do, you know, and I can't keep my head. My love, she bursts in tears, then flings herself upon the bed. And oh, what stench, my bleeding one! 'Tis like a stagnant fen. It smells as if Lake Netherclam hath turned itself again. The dogs have gathered at the door. They think I've slain a lamb. The vultures fix their baleful eyes upon that wounded clam. They think I'm making dinner, for the stench hangs thick and strong. And if I had a bouillon cube, they wouldn't be far wrong. So low her lips, they leave a trail as from a pilgrim slug. But must she drag her meat flaps cross my oriental rug? With panties at her ankles, my love shuffles across the room. It's boo-hoo-hoo and nag each time she's on her moon. Almighty Christ, her voice is shrill, like nails against a slate. And I can't find a quiet place to go and masturbate. Don't ask her for a reach around, she'll beat you with a rock. I suppose I'm to apologize because I have a cock. But I need sex, yet so much blood. 'Tis more than I can take. If blood was what I wanted, hell, I'd fucking uncook steak. So out to fling thy changing moods and wring in anxious hands. Go hence to burn thy dinner too, and nag some other man. I hie thee to that sodden hut, to wail without surcease. Sweet minstrel hut, I built thee well. At last I'll have my peace.
Arthur Greenleaf Holmes. Have a great day. Check him out. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Matt.